If you want to understand how empires survive against overwhelming odds, study the weapons they refuse to explain. In the 7th century, the Byzantine Empire possessed one such weapon. It burned on water, and no one outside the empire ever learned how to make it. They called it Greek fire. At the time, the Byzantine Empire was under severe pressure. Arab forces were expanding rapidly across former Roman territories. North Africa had fallen. The Levant had fallen. The Mediterranean was no longer secure. The capital, Constantinople, stood exposed. The city's strength was its walls. Its weakness was the sea. Arab fleets began challenging Byzantine naval control. If Constantinople fell from the water, the empire would fracture. That is when Greek fire entered recorded history. The weapon was reportedly developed in the late 7th century, often attributed to an engineer named Kallinikos, possibly a refugee from the eastern provinces. Whether he invented it or refined an existing formula remains uncertain. What is certain is this: by 674 AD, during the first Arab siege of Constantinople, Byzantine ships were deploying a liquid incendiary weapon that behaved unlike anything seen before. It was launched through siphon-like bronze tubes mounted on ships. When ignited, the substance erupted forward in a stream of flame. It clung to wood, it clung to sailcloth, it clung to flesh, and when it struck water, it did not extinguish. It continued burning. In naval warfare, fire had always been dangerous. But fire was predictable. Water was its enemy. Greek fire reversed that assumption. Enemy sailors reportedly panicked as flames spread across the surface of the sea itself. Ships attempting to retreat found burning liquid floating toward them. Buckets of water made the flames worse. Contemporary accounts describe a roaring projection of fire accompanied by thick smoke. The psychological effect was immediate. Fleets accustomed to boarding combat suddenly faced a weapon that attacked from distance and resisted suppression. The Byzantines used it repeatedly in naval engagements. During the prolonged conflicts with Arab fleets in the 7th and 8th centuries, Greek fire proved decisive. It allowed a smaller naval force to repel larger fleets. It preserved Constantinople when defeat might have meant collapse. The formula, however, was never publicly documented. Unlike many medieval technologies, Greek fire was treated as a state secret. The manufacturing process was compartmentalized. Specialized units handled its deployment. Knowledge was restricted to trusted officials. Even Byzantine historians avoided detailed descriptions. Speculation about its composition continues to this day. Some theories suggest petroleum-based mixtures, possibly derived from natural naphtha deposits. Others propose combinations of quicklime, sulfur, and resins. The exact proportions remain unknown. What made Greek fire particularly effective was not just chemistry, it was delivery. Mounted siphons projected controlled streams. Portable versions, sometimes referred to as hand siphons, may have existed for closer engagements. Ceramic grenades filled with incendiary material were also used in later periods. This was not an improvised tactic, it was engineered warfare. Naval engagements shifted because of it. Enemy commanders had to account for a weapon that altered the basic rules of maritime combat. Wooden ships became liabilities. Tight formations became targets. The psychological dimension cannot be overstated. Fire is already primal. A weaponized fire that floats and spreads across water intensifies fear beyond calculation. Soldiers trained to hold formation under arrow fire struggled against something that felt unnatural. Greek fire blurred the line between weapon and phenomenon. It bought the Byzantine Empire time to fortify, time to reorganize, time to survive. Yet, despite its effectiveness, Greek fire did not grant permanent supremacy. Technology spreads, tactics evolve, enemies adapt. By the later medieval period, references to Greek fire become less prominent. Other incendiary weapons emerged in different regions. Gunpowder began reshaping siege and naval warfare. Cannon fire replaced liquid projection as the dominant naval threat. And somewhere in that transition, the formula was lost. The Byzantine Empire guarded the secret closely, but secrecy has a cost. When institutions weaken, knowledge stored within them fractures. By the time Constantinople fell in 1453, there is no reliable evidence that the original formula still existed in usable form. A weapon that once saved an empire disappeared without clear record. Greek fire represents something larger than a chemical compound. It represents strategic asymmetry, a smaller power, under pressure, deploying a specialized technology to offset numerical disadvantage. It also represents the power of controlled information. The Byzantines did not rely on the weapon alone. They built systems around it. Naval crews were trained specifically for its deployment. Ships were constructed with mounted projection systems in mind. Doctrine incorporated its use deliberately. Greek fire was not chaos in a barrel. It was institutionalized advantage. When discussing medieval warfare, it is easy to focus on swords, armor, and cavalry charges. But naval dominance determined trade, supply, and survival. Without control of surrounding waters, Constantinople would have been vulnerable to sustained siege and starvation. Greek fire shifted that balance repeatedly. It discouraged blockades. It punished fleets that ventured too close. It reinforced the perception that the Byzantine navy possessed something unpredictable. In war, unpredictability is leverage. The fear of an unseen formula can deter engagement before battle begins. And that may have been its greatest strength. The exact mixture may be lost. The precise proportions may never be reconstructed. But its legacy remains clear. Greek fire preserved Constantinople at critical moments when collapse seemed plausible. It altered naval doctrine in the Mediterranean. It demonstrated that technological edge, when protected and deployed strategically, can compensate for political weakness. Every military era believes its advantage is permanent. But history shows otherwise. A formula once feared across the sea is now a subject of speculation. An empire once defended by burning water eventually fell to cannon fire and shifting alliances. If you study weapons like Greek fire closely, you begin to see the pattern. Dominance depends not just on power, but on preservation of knowledge. And when that knowledge disappears, so does certainty. Follow for more war doctrine, lost weapons, and the systems that shaped empires.